the ancient mound builders, and modern mysteries, right now on Columbus Neighborhoods.
Support for Columbus Neighborhoods is provided by
At American Electric Power, we've been proud sponsors of WOSU Public Media for many years and strong supporters of our headquarters city here in Columbus, both downtown and in neighborhoods like yours.
State Auto Insurance Companies, serving customers and communities for nearly a century. Today, a technology and transformation company. Risk takers, creators, innovators. A company defined not by its history, but by its people. State Auto. The Columbus Foundation. Smart philanthropy for a smart city. ColumbusFoundation.org. Bailey Cavalieri. Your relationship with your law firm doesn't need to be complicated, it just needs to be right. CODA. Keeps our community moving forward. Falgren Moortine Marketing and Communications. Think wider. Ohio Health focuses on you and your family with a mission to improve the health of our communities. And by contributions from these and other Columbus area families who support WOSU. Thank you.
I'm standing in front of the sculpture of Chief Leatherlips at Scioto Park in Dublin. He was a leader of the Wyandot tribe in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. Popular legend has it he brings the rain to our famous golf tournament every year. Now, we don't know if that's true, but we do know that there is evidence of people who existed much earlier than the Wyandots and other Native American tribes here in central Ohio. We call them the Mound Builders.
Well, in the whole of Ohio, there were some 10,000 odd earthworks and mounds that have been found. Now, not all of them were built at the same time. Some of them were built accretionally, others had parts added to them. Some earthworks had burials, some didn't. They didn't necessarily have alignments to stars or sun or anything like that. Some did, some didn't.
We don't know what the Adena people called themselves. The name Adena comes from a state of Thomas Worthington down near Chillicothe, where there was a large mound that was excavated by William Mills about 1903. This is a copy of an 1883 map of Franklin County, and there's odd marks here. These actually mark prehistoric mounds and earthworks in different parts of the county. And there are several up here in the Clintonville area. This dot here on the property of Mr. H.C. Cook is the Dominion Land Company. There's a mound at the end of Rathbone Road where it meets the river. There's 3 mounds over on the property of the Deaf and Blind School. There's one on Webster Park. It was allegedly in somebody's backyard, but seems to have disappeared. There's 3 down here near Olentangy Village. And on the very eastern side of Clinton Township, there's a circular earthwork at Ferris and Westerville Road. If you go and look at it today, there's a pre-Civil War brick farmhouse in the middle of it, and it's just sitting there with a rather uncertain future.
Mounds have had an uncertain future since the European arrival to this area. As neighborhood developments move forward, mounds in the Clintonville neighborhood found their future to be in question.
The Dominion Land Company was developing this area between Glenmont and Huronia, putting a road through, and in that they found this Adena Indian mound.
The Dominion Land Company site was purchased by the Dominion Land Company in March of 1953 for $20,000, and they were going to be building a nice housing complex in that area. The mayor at the time did not really care for the idea of that. He would much rather have saved it for a park. So there was a public meeting and a petition throughout the citizens of Clintonville, and the citizens decided that they thought it was in their best interest to have the housing development go in. So the city council voted 7-0 in favor of the citizens, and construction started in April of 1953. The site originally consisted of an embankment wall that was around 2.9 acres big, and originally 2 mounds. When OHS got on site, one of the mounds was almost completely gone, and most of the embankment wall in that area as well. There was a lot of bulldozing going on at the time, and it was a salvage archaeology project to come in and try to get as much information before it was just completely gone. Initially, they had agreed that they would be there for 2 weeks to do the work, but it ended up taking 4 months.
Here is the blueprint of the site before it was developed, showing the embankment and the 2 mounds, and under one of those mounds was found this post-mold pattern. These are small pits where a piece of wood or a part of a tree would have been put in.
And it may have held a structure or a fence. And that's typical of not only Adena mounds, but Hopewell mounds as well, that they would build a structure for a purpose, and when they're finished using the structure, they tore it down or burned it down or what have you, and then memorialized it by building a mound over top of it.
With that particular structure and that mound, there was a burial that was found, and it was of a 6 to 8-year-old child. The thinking is that that would have been a structure that was used as a mortuary complex type thing.
So once the posts had been removed or the wood had rotted away, people actually used the pits to put things into them and bury them down there. Here is somebody excavating within one of those post molds. So this gives you a little bit of scale. Each post mold is numbered so that they can keep track of what the sizes are of each one, the dimensions, how deep it is, etc., what might be found inside those post molds.
The items found inside the 2 mounds and surrounding ditches were moved to the Ohio History Connection for study and storage.
The assemblage consisted of about 90% pottery, and most of the material that was recovered was not from the mounds themselves. They were from the embankment ditches on either side of the mound. So there's a thought that these deposits were left over from the funerary gathering.
What is significant about the Dominion Land Company mounds are that there was a type of pottery that was excavated there. It's rather crude, thick, grit-tempered pottery, maybe granite-tempered. They didn't have handles on them, they had lugs, these sort of protruding, stubby, cylinder-shaped things that obviously helped to maintain control, to hold it up. And they didn't put these on a fire and cook with them like we do a pot or a pan today, that these were probably set into a shallow trench, and whatever was being cooked was cooked with hot rocks that were put into the pot with the food. And here you can see a large piece of one of these pots. You can see it's nearly an inch thick. You'll never confuse this with Southwest pottery by any means. It's not painted. It's got areas where it's been burned. It's wonderful archaeological material. It's just not quote-unquote pretty stuff.
There were lots of animal bones that were left there as well, so there was evidently eating going on at the same site.
There were pieces of tubular pipes, smoking pipes, and that sort of thing recovered. This is a small Adena-style point. It's sort of like a time marker by the sort of ovate stem and the triangular blade. This is typical of the type of point that the Adena people would have made, somewhere roughly between 500 BC and 100 AD. This is probably used as a roller pestle, that they would use this to crush different things, acorns, walnuts.
People have been here for thousands of years, over 10,000 years. It's a good place to be. You can't go anywhere without tripping over this stuff.
The Adena people probably tended patches of plants, sunflower, chenopodium and things, but I don't know if you can really call them farmers.
The area had the rivers, the floodplains, a very rich environment with lots of different plants and flowers and trees and animals to eat. So it was a very good area to live in, easy to transport themselves around on the waterways.
Archaeologists have identified over 10,000 mounds in Ohio. How many more mounds were there that have been lost over time due to construction and farming? We'll never know. What we do know is that we're still learning about the people who made the mounds, their ideas about architecture and burials. All that makes the Hopewell and Adena cultures of the past some of our most enduring neighbors. How we protect the mounds in the future is still a question mark as our communities grow.
Curious C-Bus is an online portal from WOSU that allows viewers like you to submit questions or ideas for stories on things you've always wondered about. Today, we're going to answer one of them. Here's the question. This part of the country is known for its Indian burial mounds. What about Mound Street? Does the street have a connection to the ancient past? We got Ed Lentz on the case, and he tells us about the story of Mound Street.
When Columbus was laid out in 1812, Joel Wright, the man who laid the town out, gave sort of novel names to the city streets, Town Street, State Street, and so on. But when he came to the south end of downtown, he didn't have any trouble finding a name. There was a 40-foot Indian mound sitting smack in the middle of Mound and High Street. When High Street reached the mound, which was 300 feet wide at the base, it simply took a left and went around the mound and kept on going. By the early 1830s, the decision was made to remove the mound, so digging began on both sides of High Street until essentially the mound was split in half and High Street could basically move on. Clay from that mound was used in virtually every initial brick building in the city, including the original State House. When the State House burned in 1852, those bricks were reused in the new Ohio State House. So part of that Indian mound is with us still in the Ohio State House.
We don't know who inhabited the mounds or what their ancient cultures were like, but we can learn a lot from the artifacts they left behind. An effigy pipe at Ohio History Connection is one example.
Brad, something tells me it's time for a smoke break here at the Ohio History Connection.
Well, we're not supposed to do that in the building, but these things are smoking pipes that would have been used in rituals, not for recreational smoking. The people that were smoking these pipes were smoking the native Nicotiana rustica, which would put them into a trance state.
And this is Hopewell culture. How old is it?
This is Hopewell culture, 2,000 years old, from about AD 1 up to about AD 400.
And the Hopewell culture was prevalent in this area, but also prevalent in much of the nation. I mean, this was a center of that culture in Ohio.
Yes, there are Hopewell-like cultures around eastern North America, but central and southern Ohio was the heartland where the architecture is at its grandest and the artistic creations are particularly masterful.
Did they cultivate the tobacco, whatever it is, or was it wild?
The tobacco was part of the Eastern Agricultural Complex, so it was domesticated. It wasn't a native Ohio plant. It was domesticated further south and came up with plants like maize or some of the other plants. But tobacco was an early one of the plants that came from the south up here.
This is kind of green. What is this made of?
Well, these are made out of pipestone. And Tremper Mound is right across the river from a source of pipestone in Ohio. It's called Ohio Pipestone. And for years, we all assumed, since this was right across the river, that these pipes were made out of Ohio pipestone. But some archaeologists from Illinois came by and studied these using a non-destructive method to determine its composition. And it turns out that the bulk of these pipes are made out of Illinois pipestone, which makes it part of that Hopewell interaction sphere, partly trade, but also partly, I think, people bringing offerings from far-flung areas to these Ohio sites. So these are pipes used in Ohio. Perhaps they were even made in Ohio, but they're made out of a material that comes from Illinois, even though right across the river was an Ohio pipestone.
So it's possible that the site here in Ohio was so important that Hopewell from all over were conducting a sort of pilgrimage to bring items and to have an experience here.
I think that's exactly right.
Well, these are terrific. Thanks for sharing them with us.
Well, thank you.
Earlier, we heard Bill Pickard at the Ohio History Connection mention a house that was on the east side of Clinton Township that was possibly built on an earthwork. There's always been speculation on the real story behind this property. Was it built on an earthwork, or was it just a house built in 1812 by an early pioneer? Doreen Uhas-Sauer, with the help of the Ohio History Connection, unlocks the mysteries of this property.
Hi, Brian. I'm Doreen.
Yes, Brian, my pleasure.
It's nice to meet you, too. Here we are on Westerville Road on a busy street in this beautiful rural setting and this great house. Brian, do you know much about Zenas Jackson?
Not much, other than the fact that he built the house in 1856, and I think that he was very much interested in the plight of Underground Railroad, the slaves.
So Zenas Jackson is usually just referred to as a pioneer of this area, and so he acquires 5,000 acres from what I can tell. The fact that it is on Westerville Road gives part of the mystery of what surrounds this house. One is this an Underground Railroad house? And Westerville is a very ardent, well-known area on the Underground Railroad. The other mystery, of course, is the house being in this mound, and it's talked about as being the only house in the United States built within an ancient earthwork, meaning an Indian mound. We're not sure exactly if it is about the Indians or if it is about William Henry Harrison, who was tromping through this part of the country in War of 1812. This would have been a road, at least established in some rudimentary form. And so for the first time in the entire history of the house, people from the Ohio History Connection will come out and they will look to see if they can determine which is it, that it is the garrison or is it actually a much more ancient earthworks, of which there are many in Ohio and many in this area. I am thrilled that you're here to help solve the mystery of this house. And so can you talk about what you're going to do today to reveal the truth?
Yeah, we're most interested in this embankment here that's in the yard and trying to figure out what that might be. Well, we've brought some equipment today, including a drone to take some photos from above and make a 3D map of the site.
Okay.
And I have a magnetometer
okay.
that we'll use to look down into the ground. It's a machine that detects the Earth's magnetic field.
Okay.
And it's pretty good at detecting buried ditches in the ground, like maybe fortification ditch or perhaps something associated with an ancient earthwork.
So basically you could perhaps tell the difference between an ancient earthwork of mound builders and a more 19th century embankment that would have been with a fort or some kind of an enclosure.
Mostly I think what we'll be trying to do is see what the shape of it is. So the ancient earthworks that are about 1,700 years old, those tend to be perfectly geometric or nearly perfectly geometric, and circles are really common.
Well, good luck.
Well, thanks. Go backwards a foot. Okay, stake it. First you have to set up this grid so you know where to put the machine to collect the right data.
While Jared and Bill continue their test, Brian, why don't you tell me a little bit more about the history of the house? What do you think? Is it an Underground Railroad house?
Well, inside the house, in the basement, behind the 2-foot wall, in our laundry area, having to go into the wall to do some plumbing, it was discovered that it was actually a room that the slaves slept in, which was concealed. And they came down from the first floor, the bathroom area, down 3 steps and were in the basement, and no one ever knew they were there. Okay, now this is the area that the plumbing was done, and unbeknownst to, I think, people prior to having to do this job, no one ever knew that if you can see where the light is shining, there's the steps right there.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
3 steps, that wood right there.
Amazing, just amazing.
Yes.
It's wonderful to know that something so historic is in the hands of people who preserve that history, care about it, but can connect that mission. That is a great message to have with this house.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you. The house is being used today to house men that are coming out of institutions, have done time, oftentimes men that society's turned their back on.
I was involved and associated with selling drugs and using drugs, and I got the best of me, and over a period of years of this constant getting arrested, going to jail, getting out of jail, going back to jail, I finally worked up enough criminal background to end up in prison. But I knew that this was not who I was. So I made up my mind to lean towards the spiritual side, the part I was raised with.
My wife and I, we were at Worthington Methodist Church, and we moved down to serve at New Life Methodist Church at 5th and High Street. And in experiencing what urban ministry is all about, we learned how to stand next to people that were from a different side of life, and fell in love with the thought that we could really be useful in God's kingdom if we learned how to do that. And so we looked around and found a house on Agler Road that would serve as a ministry house. And we found, after being in business for about 2 years, that after 4 to 6 months with us, they weren't yet ready to transition on their own. And so we were looking for a second ministry house, which is this one here.
The day they get out, we pick them up at the bus station. Some having done 15, 20, 25 years.
I'm living differently now, so I feel that it's important that I myself stay on the right path to show the men that you too can do this, you can be different. Men are able to come here and get reunited with their families, reunited with their old professions. They have an opportunity to become useful again.
Where's my brothers? I can't see them. Where are they hiding at?
The men that come to us, many of them have deep-seated problems in their life. Their mothers were prostitutes, their fathers weren't around. Some of the men have never had dinner together around a family dinner table. And so when we have our family meals once a month and we allow them to bring loved ones together for something like Thanksgiving, for many of them, this is the first time they've ever experienced this. I think we all need to be more forgiving. I think we need to be more loving. I think we need to put ourselves in situations that are different from what we see in suburban America, where we come home, raise the garage door, close it, and go into our backyard that's fenced off, and we don't have to deal with anybody except people that are like us.
The gratification that you feel when you see a man come out, get his life back together, get back with his family, get a job, get an automobile, get his home, that's huge.
So we're anxiously waiting. This is going to be the result of ancient earthworks or the fortification of General William Henry Harrison.
What you see on the map is the result of the GPS mapping and then the magnetic surveys. Then you see the red line there is the top of the embankment that we can see in the yard, and the blue dotted line is the bottom of what we think might be the ditch. And if you were to fit a circle to that, you'd notice that a perfect circle fits that pretty well. Now, I also ran an electrical resistance meter, and really what it's mapping is the distribution of water. Hopefully you can see that arcing around in here, these black readings there, those are higher resistance, so it's dry. There, that's the top of the embankment. And then the white area there, that indicates lower resistance readings. And the water's down in the ditch, so it makes sense.
This is exciting. Congratulations. You've given birth to a mound.
Yeah, right, you're a new father. You know, it's really probably because of this house being here that this circular enclosure is still as intact as it is today.
Thanks for being with us, and remember, you can catch all of our episodes on columbusneighborhoods.org. Plus, see our stories on the WOSU mobile app. And you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We'll see you back here next week on Columbus Neighborhoods.
No more beautiful moons where we spend in our homes, but by the council fire. For the people have grown cold and hungry, and of war they begin to tire. You have taken all that we had, what the Creator said was ours. But you cannot take away our soul, it lives in the earth.
Support for Columbus Neighborhoods is provided by...
At American Electric Power, we've been proud sponsors of WOSU Public Media for many years and strong supporters of our headquarters city here in Columbus, both downtown and in neighborhoods like yours.
State Auto Insurance Companies, serving customers and communities for nearly a century. Today, a technology and transformation company. Risk takers, creators, innovators. A company defined not by its history, but by its people. State Auto. The Columbus Foundation. Smart philanthropy for a smart city. ColumbusFoundation.org. Bailey Cavalieri. Your relationship with your law firm doesn't need to be complicated, it just needs to be right. CODA. Keeps our community moving forward. Falgren Mortine Marketing and Communications. Think wider. Ohio Health focuses on you and your family with a mission to improve the health of our communities. And by contributions from these and other Columbus area families who support WOSU. Thank you.